A very happy evening to one and all.
Today was the first day of the Inspiro 2020, and well, speaking honestly, today was just amazing.
It truly was. We had a splendid inauguration ceremony, followed by speakers who imparted a lot to the viewers through their stories, ideas, and most importantly, their experience.
Correct. And to keep the same energy and inspiration flowing, and to add imagination to the wonders of space, we have brought to you our next speaker.
Space. Hearing the word itself opens up boundaryless imaginations and widens our eyes. It is said that space is the breath of art. Space is to place as eternity is to time.
The universe can still fall short if all of our imaginations are combined. We can keep on going on the topic, but it will end up boring you all. So, why not invite our next speaker and hear about the wonders and beauty of space from her itself?
George Bush once said, mankind is drawn to heavens for the same reason we were once drawn into unknown lands and across the open sea. We choose to explore space because doing so improves our lives.
Having said that, we introduce you to our next speaker, Ms. Shawna Pandya. Shawna Pandya is a citizen scientist, astronaut, and also an aquanaut. Not only that, but she is also an acclaimed physician, martial artist, and a dynamic public speaker.
At present, she is the director of Space Medicine Group at Project PoSSUM and the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences.
She is also associated with Operational Space Medicine at IIAS as the chief instructor.
So without taking any further time, we would hand over the platform to Shona ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It is my extreme pleasure to be here today. And today we're going to talk all about pushing the limits. We're going to talk about my experiences, the lessons I've learned, and how I hope they will help you. But before we go any further, I want to start with a video. So
Why do we explore? Why do we discover? I think discovery is a fundamental human trait. It's what makes us human. You could send astronauts up to hostile environments, to space or the moon or Mars, without knowing what to expect. Or you can try to prepare yourself as much as possible here on Earth. And the Mars Desert Research Station is one of these simulated environments. The bottom line is, space is trying to kill you. Coming up to the Mars Desert Research Station is like going through a portal into another world. You see these tremendous formations that look like they've been meticulously arranged by a giant. I would say that human exploration in space is one of the most challenging and one of the most ambitious things that we've done as a human race. When you look at your ideal candidate for Mars, you want your jack of all trades, but at least master of some. Taking part in centrifuge studies, experiencing aerobatic flight. I've been a lifelong martial artist. I'm a physician. I have a background in space medicine and space medicine research. Everything I do in my life is related to reaching that goal. I want to be the one that forges trails, the one that leads the way, the one that sets foot on Mars. Unless someone actively stops me, I will be here pushing limits forever. Now, where do we go to next?
All right, so you've got a sense of a little bit of what I do from that video. And so now we're going to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned. So I'm just going to share the presentation again. So I wear lots of different hats. As you heard, I'm a physician, I'm a scientist astronaut candidate, and we'll talk about what that means. I'm an aquanaut. But before any of this, I was a little girl with a dream. And like many of you, I would just stare up at the night sky when I was a child and be inspired by those thousands of stars that would leap out at me, by the Milky Way galaxy's arm. And I would just wonder. I would wonder what it would be like to go up into space, to be one of those humans who could actually get to live and work and discover in space. And at the same time, when I was growing up, I was inspired by the first Canadian woman in space, Dr. Roberta Bondar. And in my child mind, you know, it was just a simple leap because I looked at the similarities between myself and her. So she was Canadian, I was Canadian. She was a female, I'm a female. She was a girl guide, I'm a girl guide. So now all I had to do was become a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut too. And then I could achieve my goal. And so that actually just directed my trajectory going forward. So in high school, I decided that my next path of study would be exactly what Dr. Bondar had done. And I knew that I wanted to go into neuroscience. I knew I wanted to become a physician. And in my mind, it was as simple as that. But then came my first challenge. When I was applying to medical school, I knew that it was extremely competitive. I knew extremely qualified candidates who were kind and smart and compassionate who weren't even getting interviews. And I realized I needed a backup plan. And that was one of my first lessons. Always, always, always have a backup plan. And so for me, I thought, what could I do and what could I spend my year doing that I would be equally excited about and equally passionate about, that if I didn't get into medical school, I would still be excited to partake in? And for those of you who may have guessed it, the answer was space. I was always aware of something called the International Space University, where you could go do your master's. And this place sounded like Starfleet Academy right out of Star Trek. And it was the opportunity to learn about everything related to space. And they had an entire master's program dedicated to it. And so I thought to myself, let's apply to both. And that way, if I don't get into medical school, I will at least be doing something I'm passionate about. And then to my surprise, I got into both. And that was when my first hard decision, a good decision, but still a hard decision, came along. And I realized that even if I got into medical school, I still kind of wanted to do the space thing. And I was incredibly lucky because I asked my faculty at the University of Alberta Medical School for a deferral, and they granted it. And that was the start of the beginning of my adventure and career in space and space medicine. This is a picture of our class. These are all the females in our class. We had 50 students from 31 countries. This is from a shot when we went to Star City in Russia. And this was the beginning of a lot of opportunities. It was the first time I really realized that I could take my passions in medicine and in space and combine them into a career. From there, I was given the opportunity to intern at the European Astronaut Center in the Crew Medical Support Office. And this is the beginning of building my experiences, building my credibility, building my CV in this field. And one opportunity led to another. Before long, I finished my year at the university, at the International Space University, and came back and started med school. But I wasn't done with space. And that's when another opportunity cropped up. Between this opportunity at the European Astronaut Center and conferences and papers I published, I became a strong enough candidate to be one of 2 Canadians sponsored to go down to NASA's Johnson Space Center and complete an aerospace medicine elective. And I managed to keep that space dream alive throughout medical school. Today, I'm a practicing physician in general practice, as well as rural emergency medicine. And that's the first lesson I want you to take away from this, is that don't be afraid to take the road less traveled. Even if you are extremely ambitious, even if you know what your end goal is, the journey matters just as much. And if you keep an eye out for opportunity and you aren't afraid to say yes to opportunities that may crop up, it'll serve you well. So speaking of taking the road less traveled, I want to tell you a little bit about what I do with Project PoSSUM. So we love our acronyms in the space and exploration world, and PoSSUM is no different. PoSSUM stands for Polar Suborbital Science of the Upper Mesosphere, and it is a citizen scientist astronautics program. And I could tell you a little bit about what we do, but I would rather show you. So I'm going to start another video here.
I would say that for me, the hardest part was, as much as you know your roles, as much as you've practiced all the parabola sequences on the ground, once you're pressurized and once you're in zero G, the maneuverability becomes that much harder. For one of the parabolas, the busy.
So that's just a glimpse into what we do. And I want to tell you that that is every bit as fun as it looks. It's impossible not to wear a spacesuit in zero G and have a giant smile on your face. And this is an introduction into PoSSUM. It's a scientist astronaut candidate program. We do amazing things like test spacesuits in zero gravity. We've conducted these tests over 5 years, 6 successive parabolic flight campaigns. I've been lucky enough to fly over 140 parabolas in zero G to date. So for those of you who haven't been familiarized with the term, it is possible to get zero G on Earth without ever actually going to space. And so what you do is you take an airplane and you fly up and then fly down in a parabolic fashion. And so if you think about going down in an elevator, you're weightless for a brief second. So you mimic that in the airplane and you gain 20 seconds of zero gravity. And so we've tested the maneuverability in the spacesuit in a progressively graded fashion. And it's been an amazing journey. We've also tested a different kind of spacesuit called an EVA, or extravehicular activity spacesuit. So this is the kind of spacesuit that you would see on a spacewalk or on the Apollo moon missions. So this is us at the Canadian Space Agency testing it. Last year, we tested this IVA spacesuit, the intravehicular activity spacesuit, in water emergency egress or spacecraft crash landing scenarios. And we've also done some really cool science by testing tomography instruments in an unpressurized research craft. So this is us in northern Canada in 2017, and we were using that instrument that you see over my shoulder to get the three-dimensional structure of a specific kind of cloud called a noctilucent cloud, thought to be related to climate change. We've also done some work on the ground. This is us just at Impact Crater outside of Flagstaff, Arizona, where we made some lessons, learned all about planetary geology. And these are some of my amazing teammates with whom I've shared the journey. We've been at it for 5 years since the beginning. And I think that's one of my other takeaways. We first talked about always seeking opportunity and not being afraid to take the road less traveled. But the other part of it is make sure you do it with the right team. Find people who are willing to walk through walls for you, but don't be afraid to do the same for them. These are some of the amazing women who I've worked with through the PoSSUM program. This is us at Cinder Lake, where the Apollo astronauts trained. And I would say that a lot of the success I've achieved today wouldn't have been possible without the support of an amazing team, amazing environment, and amazing family. The other lesson I've learned is it's totally possible to forge your own trail. When I started out, I never would have imagined that it was possible to take my passion for medicine and for space and to blend them into a single career. And what I've learned through PoSSUM, these are shots from the Operational Space Medicine course that I teach, that it's possible to take your passion and forge your own trail. And all it takes is a little bit of hard work. And so in this class, we took people with no medical background and taught them the principles of assessment, triage, and treatment in a resource-limited setting, because on Mars, you may not have all the medical capabilities of Earth, and you need to have some medical background and training. So I'm going to switch tracks a little bit now and talk to you about my experiences in underwater environments. So 1 year ago at this time, we just completed our first ever aquanautics mission. And so the term of an aquanaut is someone who lives and breathes the same pressure of air as the surrounding water for at least 24 hours. So this was the Neptune mission. And as I told you before, we love our acronyms in the space and exploration world. And Neptune is no different. Neptune stands for Nautical Experiments in Physiology, Technology, and Underwater Exploration. And with this team, we managed to go down as a flagged expedition of the Explorers Club. These are my 4 crewmates, spanning from Canada and the United States. We had engineers, imaging scientists, military commanders, and even a lawyer. And together with this team, we conceived of the mission, the science, the technology testing, and we tested brand new technologies like VR, virtual reality underwater. So this is myself as the crew physician connecting with the head of radiology in a Canadian city 4,000 kilometers away, going over the medical imaging of a patient. And we also performed key experiments in physiology, psychology, and cognition. Last year was an incredible year, and while we're speaking about underwater habitats, this is the Aquarius Reef base, just 13 miles away from the Jules Undersea Lodge where our mission was. This is where I completed my dive medical technician training, and this is where NASA runs its NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations, or NEMO experiments. So I really want to underscore that lesson of you can go to the ends of the earth, you can go to the moon, you can go to the ocean floor, but you won't go very far without a great team. Even if you have the best and the highest of ambitions, whether it's in medicine, in space, in acting, in athletics, you need to surround yourself by good people, but you need to make sure that you are willing to give them every one of your efforts and loyalties in return. The last set of stories I want to share with you come from my time at the Mars Desert Research Station. So space is risky, space is hard, space is expensive. We don't want the first time we ever practice anything in space to happen when we go to space, because we want to know what can go wrong before we ever get that far. That's why we have analog environments on Earth. So what does analog mean? Analog means analogous in some fashion to the spaceflight environment, whether we're talking about the zero-G parabolic flight, or we're talking about the isolation and confinement that you saw in the underwater missions, or being very remote and resource limited, like you see in this image. So this is the Mars Desert Research Station in the Utah desert. This is 3 hours from the nearest town, the nearest major city. It is essentially living real life on fake Mars, and you are trapped with your crew in a tin can for 2 weeks. And even if you go outside, you have to suit up, because the Martian environment will essentially kill you if you're not wearing a protective spacesuit. So Everything you do, the science you do, the exploration, the crew activities are all as if you were on a Mars mission. So I was lucky enough to be on this mission, on this rotation twice. First in 2018 as the crew physician and later as commander earlier this year. And there's some key lessons. So everything I've told you about teamwork is still applicable. When we talk about surviving and thriving in austere environments, it's not hard to imagine that a lot of these lessons apply to 2020 in a very strange year with COVID, when some of us may be forced to quarantine or not travel or be in isolation. And the lessons that I've learned stem from being a good crewmate, practicing what NASA calls good expeditionary behavior. And so focusing on the objectives of your mission rather than your personal objectives, asking yourself if you're the best possible crewmate for your team. And you may not be living on Mars and you may not be living with a crew, but think about your family as your crew and ask how you can possibly serve your family, your roommates, your crew better. The other lesson I want to share is about pushing the limits. We saw these amazing vistas, we saw these amazing landscapes, but they didn't just happen every time we stepped out of the hab. Sometimes we had to climb the highest, steepest, most slippery slopes to be able to get these sprawling views. And when I think about how that applies to why push the limits, the answer is pretty obvious. We do it to see what comes next. Why does it matter that we put in the extra effort? Why that we put in the extra training, that we go the extra mile? Because we wouldn't know what else lay to be discovered before us if we didn't. So the last set of lessons I want to share with you come from my experiences in a whole host of other backgrounds. In all my experiences, have been lucky enough to pick up a host of skills. So I am an open water diver, advanced diver, rescue diver, nitrox, and peak buoyancy certified diver, as well as an aquanaut. I'm a pilot in training and a skydiver. And two key lessons I've learned from this is don't be afraid to jump in feet first. Be adaptable, be flexible, pick on numerous skill sets. They will serve you far, even if you are working a job in retail, but someday you want to go be a CEO. That experience, everything you do today has value if you let it. So everything you do it with intent. Ask yourself, how is this helping me towards my goals? What can I learn from this? The other lesson I wanted to share with you stems from dealing with fear and uncertainty. So when I was skydiving, I decided I wanted to get my accelerated free fall skydiving license. And I never thought I was afraid of anything. I never thought I had a fear of heights. Well, I discovered pretty quickly that I wasn't afraid of heights. I was afraid of jumping from heights. And the first time I ever came to this realization was when I was hanging outside the airplane door at 14,000 feet above the ground. And that's a pretty interesting time to come to that realization. And so, spoiler alert, I made it out okay. But getting over that fear taught me a lot about the principles of dealing with our fears in general. So the way I got over this fear was exposure, rationalization, and figuring out the why. So for me, the first step was rationalization. I looked at the ground below me, which seemed pretty far away and like it would hurt if I hit it. But I also looked at the plane full of people around me and realized that they seemed pretty happy, that they'd obviously made it out alive, and they were happy to do it again. The second part was exposure. My fear of skydiving wasn't cured the first time I jumped and made it out okay. And in fact, everything didn't go perfectly every time I jumped. At one point, on my second ever jump, my radio died and I had to learn how to land on my own pretty quickly. On the next jump, I didn't have the proper body position and spun out of control, hurtling through the air at 200 kilometers per hour. But these things teach you to think on your feet And also realize that even the worst case scenario happens, A, you always have time to deal with the crises as they come. And B, even if the worst case scenario happens, it's probably not as bad as your fears made it out to be. The final aspect about dealing with fear that I've learned is that figuring out your why gives you a pretty good reason to not be afraid of something. For me, in this case, I knew getting the certification would be one more qualification that would make me a competitive candidate to be an astronaut. It doesn't have to be skydiving, though. It can be as simple as spiders. Why does it matter that you get over your fear? Is it to help someone else, to help protect someone else? Is it because that to help others not be afraid? So figuring out your why, exposing yourself to your fear, and also dissecting why you're afraid are pretty good tools to have in your back pocket. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is success. It's easy to think when we see someone who's earned a lot of accolades in their life that they've woken up like this, that they've made it from point A to point B. When in reality, success often looks a lot more like this scribbled line on the right here. Success isn't pretty and success isn't perfect. And when we talk about failing and picking ourselves back up again, one of the greatest lessons I've learned come from the martial arts world. So I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. I've also fought in Muay Thai. And failing as well as getting knocked down, getting punched in the face is a pretty good teacher. And we have a saying on the sign of our dojang that says, fall down 7 times, rise up 8. As long as you're breathing, as long as you have a pulse, you have the ability to go on. And failure can be an absolutely beautiful teacher if you let it. And in fact, if we let ourselves use failures as an excuse to be better, if we dissect the series of events that led us to a suboptimal outcome and we debrief and we take the lessons learned, then we prepare ourselves for dealing with a suboptimal outcome when we deal with that failure and that series of events in the future. And so there's a way to succeed gracefully, but there's also a way to fail gracefully. And oftentimes it's pretty clear that success and failure are just 2 sides of the same coin. So the last lesson I want to share with you has to do with paying it forward. I've been really lucky. I've been all around the world pre-pandemic and virtually now, being able to share the lessons I've learned, the stories, and my experiences, as well as the friendships and relationships I've made along the way. And it's incredibly important that we pay it forward. I wouldn't be where I am today if some amazing, extremely well-established people hadn't taken the time to invest in myself when I was starting out. And so for each and every single one of you in the audience today, whether you realize it or not, someone is watching you and you're a role model for someone else. You could be at the beginning of your career, but you're still a grade, a level, a standard above someone else, and they admire you. So don't forget right now at this point in your career and later on when you've achieved the goals and successes you want, that you're here because someone took the time to invest in you. And so don't forget to pay it forward. So we've talked a lot about pushing the limits, picking your team, being fast, being flexible, keeping an eye out for opportunity. I told you that I've been really lucky to have some amazing experiences and journeys and analogs today. And it started with being inspired by a role model, by an incredible woman. And this journey came full circle last year when at the Ontario Science Centre, not only did they feature Dr. Bondar in the Canadian Women in Space exhibit, but I was featured next to my childhood idol. So don't be afraid to have dreams. Don't be afraid to go outside and be inspired and look up at the night sky. Don't be afraid to ask what if and have big dreams. But remember, even if you're inspired, make sure it's something you love. And a dream without a goal is just that a dream is without a plan to get there is just a dream. So work really, really, really hard towards your goals, but also dare to wonder, dare to push those limits, dare to ask, what if? Keep an eye out for opportunity. Don't be afraid to take the path less traveled. And when you reach the limit of where you thought that you wanted to be, remember to push further. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'm happy to take any questions you have now.
Okay, Vrishti. Yeah, Vrishti, you can continue.
Thank you, ma'am. We were thoroughly engulfed in the beauty of space throughout the session.
It's my
We
pleasure.
were really left awestruck, or let's say starstruck, from this session. So moving forward, we will pick up some of the questions by our viewers, and we'll place it to you directly here so that you can answer them. So
Sure,
the first question is, news about third woman in space of Indian origin were rolling out in the media. Saw the same on your LinkedIn profile a couple of years ago. Can you
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
discuss some points regarding the same?
Sure. So the question is about me being the third Indian origin woman in space. And this, for those of you who are paying attention to the media, this was picked up as a story 3 years ago. And so one of the most important lessons that I've learned is it's important to only represent yourself as you are, because to do less doesn't do credit to all the experiences and training and hard work that you've put in. And to do more takes away credit and experiences from others who may have put in hard work. So the story was that I was picked up by NASA to go to Mars. There's no Mars mission announced, so it's obviously not true. My role in the scientist astronaut candidate world is with Project PoSSUM. We don't have any new flight announcements at present. So I may be the third Indian origin woman in space. It may just as easily be someone else. It may be someone listening in this audience today. So I'm not going to Mars, not yet at least. But if you invite me to go to Mars, I'll happily say yes.
Right, ma'am. Right.
There's one more question from our viewer.
Mhm.
What message will you give to all the budding space aspirants out here?
Absolutely. So the message I would give is, pick an aspect of space that you're interested in. Space isn't just space, it's space policy, law, it's engineering, piloting, medicine, physiology, astrobiology, astrophysics. So pick the aspect of space that you love and study it. Learn all about it. There is a place for you in space, even if you don't think there is. Space needs all of us. Space needs the artists, the entrepreneurs, as well as the engineers.
Right, ma'am. Right. So I guess Vatsal was sufficed with that answer. So moving on with the next question. You made hard decisions following your passion. Most people fear from the outcomes and decide to give up on that and follow what society says. A message for them?
Yeah, don't be afraid to pick your own path, because people are going to tell you what's right, what's wrong, whether they know you or not. Even sometimes those close to you will try to tell you what they think is best for you, and they will do it out of love. But you're the only one who's in your head 24/7. You're the only one who has to live with the consequences of your decision. So even if it's something said to you out of love or out of kindness, but it doesn't resonate with you, give that sense and that uncertainty the respect it deserves. Because at the end of the day, your consequences and your decisions are your own. So it's up to you at the end of the day. Every single decision you make is up to you.
Very truly and
There's
aptly
one-
said, ma'am.
There's one more question from a viewer. How do initial career years of an individual look like? Like fear of executing risky things and gravitating to safe side, regret of denying safe options, and all of that.
Sure. And so I showed you all the fun stuff. I showed you the skydiving and the scuba diving and the spacesuits. But there's a lot of work. This isn't my 24/7. The early years are putting in the work, learning about space, finding like-minded people. And if there aren't like-minded people, creating that hub. So when I was starting out, there weren't space clubs at my school. There weren't extreme medicine clubs at my school. So I had to make them. And now is your time. If you want to be passionate about space, there are YouTube videos to learn about space. There's social media. There's the SEDS groups, the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. So, even just starting out, start looking for like-minded people. The other part about it is seeing what opportunities are open to you and applying for them. For those who want to join us in Project PoSSUM, if we accept all countries, all comers. So, come apply, come join us, projectpossum.org. So happy to work with you.
Right, ma'am. So as we are moving to the end of this session and end of day one of Inspiro 2020, let's end it with a rather fun question. So the question is, what do you choose between skydiving and scuba diving if you had to choose only one? Also, any plans of traveling to Gujarat, India, especially IEEE ADIT Student Branch after this pandemic ends?
Okay, those are fun questions. Okay, scuba diving versus skydiving. They're both really, really fun, but at the end of the day, I'm driven more by exploration and curiosity rather than adrenaline. So skydiving's fun, but I would pick scuba diving because, and this is one of my favorite facts, we have explored more of the surface of the moon than we have of the ocean's floors. Only 5% of the ocean's floors have been explored and mapped to date. So I would pick scuba diving. Any plans to come to Gujarat? Not yet, but if I do come, be kind because Mara Gujarati bo saru nati. But I will try to speak to you in Gujarati. But it is my mother tongue. So happy to come to Gujarat when all of this COVID business is over.
Right, ma'am. We'd love to have you over.
Be my pleasure.
Okay, so coming back to the participants, in order to get your e-certificates for this event and for providing valuable feedback to even us, we request you to fill out the feedback form provided in the chat box of the YouTube live stream.
We also request our participants to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Okay, so as a token of our gratitude, we would like to hand over a virtual memento to Shawna ma'am as the mark of our gratefulness. Here it is, ma'am.
That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for that kind gesture, and thank you very much for having me share in your wonderful week of your wonderful 3 days of inspiration. I hope that everyone enjoys their time here at Inspiro, and please, feel free to find me on social media at shawnapandya.com. I hope you enjoy the rest of your session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for the kind words.
Enjoy your time.
Bye. Bye, ma'am.
Phew, an inspiring day for all of us. And we learned everything from turning hardships into opportunities, from knowing the funda of life through the aspect of chai pani.
From knowing why we need more than geek speak to exploring the beauty of space. We are sure you all enjoyed as much as we did today.
And we are sure tomorrow will be no less. So see you all tomorrow at 11 a.m. in the morning to take off the flight of Inspiro 2020 right from where we left.
Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you to all the participants for joining.